Alright, so let me get this straight. Let me get all the ideas sorted in my mind here. So, the first Inception was all a deception to try and land a job. The second Inception was really just a deceptive conception of an idea in a businessman's mind so that deceptive conception could try and lead to more things down the line. But the grandest inception was all a deception which led to a conception about inception and led to someone dying. Did I cover all the bases in this movie? Did I do my best in that? Hey guys, what's going on? It's Daniel Strong from QuickTime Reactions, and welcome back to my Odyssey, Towards the Odyssey, where I'm going to be reviewing every single one of Christopher Nolan's movies in the lead up to the Odyssey. And last time that we went down this path, we talked about the Dark Knight trilogy, and we ended off with Dark Knight Rises, which was the last film that I covered in this series. But I have missed a couple of other movies that came out between my first movie that I covered, Memento, and then my Dark Knight trilogy. There are 3 movies that I have missed, so let us go back and catch ourselves up, shall we? Starting off, moving ourselves backwards from Dark Knight Rises, we start at Inception, which came out this year will mark 16 years since this movie first came out. This movie, of course, is written and directed by Christopher Nolan, and it stars Leonardo DiCaprio, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Ken Watanabe, marioncotillard, now known as Elliotpage, although back then he was known as Ellen Page, Tom Hardy, Michael Caine, Tom Berenger, cillianmurphy, as well as a whole host more. And this movie tells the story about an architect named Cobb, who is not your typical architect. He is more of an architect of the mind, who goes into people's dreams and extract things that he needs. He tries to get a job, but ultimately fails, but is given one last job to try and make it back to his family. But little does he know that there are forces conspiring against him to try and take him down, not only in the real world, but also in the dream world as well. Will he be able to pull it off? We'll have to wait and see. So, in my opinion, this is probably the most well-known Christopher Nolan movie. And what do I mean by that? I would say what I mean by that is, you know the visuals of this movie. For instance, the kick when Cobb falls into the bathtub. You know that as Inception, and you know that as a Christopher Nolan movie. Another instance, when Ariadne folds Paris in on itself, with the buildings like folding in on each other. You know that's Inception, and you know that's a Christopher Nolan movie. And you know the score, which we are going to talk about a little later on in this review. You know it as Inception, and you know that's a Christopher Nolan movie. You also know about the final scene, which you know is from Inception, and you know it's a Christopher Nolan movie. The ending to this movie is probably the most talked about ending in the history of at least modern cinema, because everyone is going to have an opinion. You watch this for the first time, and it ends on that spinning top on the table. Is it a dream or is it real? Now, I'm not going to put my 2 cents into it because countless others have done so. But what I am going to do is I'm going to provide a video that I think best describes my kind of position and kind of what I think are like the main themes of this movie. And it is from New Rockstars' sister channel, The Deep Dive. They did a deep dive on Inception, which I think holds a lot of merit and points out some really cool attention to detail. So I'll put that in the description if you guys want to go and check that out. First off, cast in this. Absolutely incredible. This movie you have to thank for getting Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Tom Hardy, and Marioncotillard into Dark Knight Rises. Because their performances in this were really, really good. Especially Levitt, who I don't understand how on earth he was able to do all of his own stunts in that rotating hotel hallway, which they did practically, which is another thing that marks it as Inception, and it's a Christopher Nolan movie, is that hallway fight. I don't understand how on earth he was able to do all that, because he's like flipping all around and landing on his feet, looking like he's done this like a million times over, because he probably did. He was really, really good in this movie. Not to take anything away from Leonardo DiCaprio, who is very much the main kind of focal character to this movie. But Levitt did an absolutely amazing job. And since we are talking about him, Leonardo DiCaprio, really good in this. Shocker, I know. But he is so tortured by what he did to Maul that, he's never really, given himself his grace in what he did. Like, he knows what he did is bad, but he's never moved on from it. And that kind of thing kind of hinders him in the final mission. But what Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character Arthur, there we go. I was like trying to remember his name. Arthur, when Arthur reveals that, Fisher has a very hard to get through mind, it kind of changes the dynamic of the mission, which I really like, because whenever, a plan blows up in a movie, it's like, oh, now we got to wing it now. But in this, it's like, they just roll with the punches and they go forward with it, which I know also happens in other movies, but I really like the fact that, they had this set game plan. It completely goes out the window, and now they have to formulate a new game plan on the fly. I absolutely love that. Everyone else in this movie is really, really good. Hardy as Eames is really, really good. Cotillard as Maul is both menacing and yet seductive at the exact same time, which is absolutely insane. Elliotpage is also really, really good in this. And I'm happy to hear that he's coming back for the Odyssey. In what role, I don't know. But I'll be very happy to see him in another Nolan movie, because he is really, really good in this movie. Especially with the scene in which he is, like, forming new things out of, like, the broken ends of his illusion. Another thing that I think people kind of maybe, I don't want to say skirt under, but like people don't talk about with this is like, oh, the visuals in this are really, really cool. But they are also kind of lifted from a film called Paprika, which I have covered on the channel. If you want to go way back into the archives, I covered Paprika for its 15th anniversary re-release and talked about that, and I had a fun time watching that. But when Ariadne puts her hand on the glass and it just shatters and it falls, that was 100% from Paprika. And I know Nolan has said that his screenplay for Inception was like a decade in the making, but the parallels are very coincidental. Wally Feister, of course, coming back again for cinematography, and cinematography in this is really good, especially the Mombasa chase scene and the Eames Dream snowmobile chase. Those were really, really good. The music in this, Hans Zimmer, which I think is the first time that they worked together. Now, I say first time working together because Zimmer was a part of the music process with the Batman movies. However, I think this is the first time that he's doing the music solo because James Newton Howard, who did music for Begins and Dark Knight, he was not listed as doing the music for Dark Knight Rises. So I think this is probably the movie where Zimmer really got his start with Nolan. Not to say that, he hadn't already had his start, but like doing music solo is what I mean. And I would say that this is probably the most recognizable Zimmer music, just from like a, pop culture-y standpoint, where, you hear the big boom, boom music. And again, you immediately think of Inception. I mean, this music has been memed all throughout the internet. And, every time you hear those big boom, boom notes, you immediately think of this movie. And I think, to me, that's the sign of a really good and really memorable soundtrack. So, well done to Mr. Zimmer on that. In the past, I've cataloged this as the Nolan movie that is very complex, but people still understand it. And I think the reason why people still understand it is because, much like another movie that we're going to be talking about in this series, Interstellar, it has a very solid core, where it's a father trying to get back to his kids. He's trying to do this one last job to try and make it back to his kids. And, you have all these cool visuals and a really cool way of showcasing time in this movie. And all of that is the outside shell of the candy. But the inner, like, peanut buttery goodness is, the simple story of a father trying to get back to his family. And that is what I think makes, like, Inception and Interstellar really, really sing and stand out all these years later. Is that, they have such big either visuals or ways of storytelling or conceits in the film that are based in science, but at the center is a really simple story that works like 9 out of 10 times with critics and audiences. And that's, I think, the genius of these later era Nolan films, is that the story is relatively simple, but the way it's told and the concepts that are dealt with in the movies, that is what is on the surface. And that is what gets like the most attention from people. But when you look a little deeper, it's like there is a lot of like richness and nuance to the story that you never noticed on a first time watch. But when you watch it for like the fourth or fifth or sixth time, it's like you start to see it's there and you really appreciate it more once you notice it. But yeah, Inception is an absolute classic. Amazing performances from the cast, amazing stunt work, lots of really good stunts in this, good cinematography, really great score, and it's just absolutely iconic. Like, again, if you say to a random person on the street, name me a Christopher Nolan movie, they will probably name this. May after naming The Dark Knight and, all the other Batman movies. This will probably be the movie that they mention. But those are just my thoughts on the movie. What did you guys think of the movie? Let me know down in the comments section below. But I think that is pretty much it for me on this one, guys. Be safe out there, and for those that don't know, my totem is actually built into my new microphone, because if these lights don't go off when I tap this, that means I know I'm dreaming. So let me see here. All right, I must be awake. Great. I'll catch you guys next time.